Hello and welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and on Twitch. So a very good evening if you're watching along live. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community. Without you, we couldn't make the show each week. So a huge thank you as always. Coming up on the podcast, Saints beat Leeds 1-0 in the Championship playoff final to return to the Premier League after just 1 year away. And what a way to go up. These celebrations lasting long into the night, some longer than others, let's be honest. My name is Martin Starke, and joining me this evening are three men who were all at Wembley on Sunday. Steve Grant is owner of Saints Web. Glen de la Cour is writer of the blog League 1-10. And Alfie House is senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 281 of the Total Saints podcast. So Adam Armstrong's winner means that Saints return to the Premier League for the first time of asking. 1-0 the final score in the playoff final at Wembley. Steve, have you recovered? Yeah, I think I saw a picture of you drinking Jaeger bombs at about 11:30.
I think it was earlier than that. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just tired, very, very tired now. Yeah, it was a long old day, wasn't it, for pretty much everybody, I think. But yeah, I mean, what a day for everybody. I think, given where we were a year ago, I think if you kind of said to me, right, you're gonna beat Leeds in a Wembley playoff final to go straight back up, I think I'd have probably laughed in your face. And yet here we are, everybody with hangovers, and now actually looking forward to weirdly looking forward to the next season in the Premier League, even though I think, let's be honest, it's going to be a tough old year. I mean, depending on what we do in the transfer market and how recruitment goes and that sort of thing. But yeah, let's live in the moment. It's been a terrific couple of weeks, really. Sort of basically since the last league game against Leeds, really, where I think we went into that one with a whole heap of trepidation given the 3 games previous. And credit goes to the management and the players. They've absolutely nailed it ever since that. And I think barring probably the first 10 minutes and maybe the last 10 minutes at Wembley, I think we were probably good value for it, to be honest.
Glenn, how was your day yesterday? Where were you sat? What was going on? Did you enjoy it? What time did you get there?
I know exactly what you're getting at here. We got to we had the public transport lottery with the train. That was looked like it was going to be a little bit of a delay, but we got to Waterloo and across to Wembley sort of like pretty early. But we chose to go into the ground quite early, actually, because the queues in the pubs and the fan zones were ridiculous, and we just couldn't be bothered with it. So we went into the ground and had a nice quiet drink where you could walk up to the bar and go to the toilet afterwards. There was absolutely no problem at all. So yeah, quite enjoyed that side of things. Got into the ground and I was on the second tier. Sort of opposite the Royal Box. So
these were your lucky seats, weren't they? Because haven't you've watched Saints before at Wembley behind the goal and we've not won. So you resorted to the JTP trophy.
Yeah, there was an element of it was an element of that. But no, mate, mainly I just thought, it's a Wembley final. Let's splash a bit of money and go for it. So having splashed a bit of money, I was somewhat disappointed to find that literally three yards behind us, a hospitality box full of Leeds fans. So, so that wasn't great. But the only time it was really irritating was at the start. When the atmosphere was building and the DJs were playing the various anthems of the clubs and whatnot. And so we had a full rendition of "Marching On Together" from 5 yards behind us, which was wonderful. Slightly annoying and did wind up quite a few people. But But yeah, so I was there with my son and my dad, and I was trying to be the adult in the room and say, just ignore him, just look at the pitch and watch the game. And then we scored, and they had to hold me back, to be honest, because it was all hand signals and swear words that my mother wouldn't have liked, and all this sort of stuff. So it was, but after that, they all shut up. Literally nothing, not a peep, not for the rest of the game. And to be fair, at the end of the game, I thought, I'm going to have a look. This is going to be amusing. Let's just see what they're like. And they were kind of just stood there quietly, sort of like taking it in, whilst all their mates, the proper Leeds fans who probably paid for their tickets, sort of like left the ground. So yeah, it actually added to the occasion a little bit. It brought a little bit more jeopardy to it. But I think, I don't think it's great. Hospitality is a bit of a anathema to me. I'm not a fan of it, and it's when when you have opposition fans seated directly behind you, it's not fantastic and not what you expect at what is basically a showpiece cup final. But all's well that ends well. But it might not have ended particularly well if we'd lost. But there you go. We didn't, so we move on.
And Alfie, how was your day? It must have been a long day for you.
Yeah, I think I've said to a few people now, but I think it's probably up there one of the best days of my life, just from start to finish. The atmosphere after was obviously just fantastic. We spoke to so many players, obviously spoke to the manager, spoke to so many of the staff, and everyone was just obviously on cloud nine. And you start to see a side to the players which you haven't really seen, previously in the season, and obviously today with the promotion party as well. The side that I'm referring to is Adam Armstrong, who turned up on stage after at least 20 odd beers and was absolutely bollocks. And I've spoken to him a lot in the last couple of years, and he's never like that before. But I think it was fantastic, and I'll state the obvious because Steve and Glen haven't yet, but they absolutely deserved the performance. The performance was brilliant. They deserved the result. The managers set the team up well. The players delivered, and I think in that game it was always going to be about who can just handle the occasion and keep their nerve. And I don't know when I thought it was going to happen, because for most of the second half I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight. I was just a bag of nerves, trembling quite literally. But then I think a moment came where maybe it was after they hit the crossbar, and then they just started giving the ball away in silly areas, and they started running it out of play, and they didn't look the same team. And I just thought, this is going to be their day. And still, the 10 minutes added on was the longest 10 minutes of my life. But the scenes of all the players just sprinting across the pitch towards the 37,000 Saints fans was something that I'll genuinely never forget. And my favourite interview at full time was Jack Stevens, because he was literally in tears as he was speaking to me and George, quite literally in tears in his eyes and threatening to sort of stream down his face as he spoke about the ups and downs of the season. And he's obviously had a bit of stick from people, but he is the leader of this team, and it was just fantastic. It made me emotional talking to him, and they all deserve it. So proud of them, and well done.
Amazing. My heart rate, I could feel the heart in my chest with about 10 minutes to go. It was just like, oh my God, come on, just 10 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about the game, Steve. I mean, the unchanged team from the West Brom win, no real surprise there. Lots of stuff about whether Che would be fit. I don't think any of us really expected him to come back in, but seemed to work out all right in the end.
Yeah, it was fine for the most part. I mean, slow start. First 10 minutes, we were all over the place, and a little bit lucky that while Leeds were bright and sharp and at it, the sum total of that was 2 shots from distance, one of which dribbled wide at about 5 miles an hour, and one which rolled into McCarthy's arms at about 5 miles an hour. So, we weathered that sort of little bit of a storm whilst the clouds gathered overhead. And then once the sun came out, we settled down and got down to business. And it was, the remainder of that first half was very good. And I mean, arguably could have been 2 up with the second Armstrong chance right on half time, where Meslier makes a good save, but there's nobody following in, and that is probably where a fit Che Adams, if he was starting, would have been in position for a tap in there. I mean, based on this season, not wholly convinced he'd have scored it, but yeah, that was probably the one other big chance. Smallbone's free kick was a fairly comfortable save, I thought. A couple of other sort of blocked half attempts before we took the lead as well. So it wasn't as if the goal was a complete smash and grab. I mean, I saw a couple of places describing it as against the run of play. It was like, it wasn't really. But I mean, you kind of have to frame all of this in the sort of in the position of kind of every national media outlet is reporting this from a Leeds perspective. We're not the story in town here. And so from that perspective, obviously it's even more satisfying the way it's ended. Second half again started slowly, gave the ball away a lot, and actually I thought for most of the second half we were really poor in possession, which is kind of unlike us. But I think that's part of that is the occasion taking hold. It was pretty hot when you're in the sun. I kind of wouldn't ever usually feel this way, but I actually kind of felt a little bit sorry for all the Leeds fans down that end because they must have been absolutely roasting with the sun beating down on them for the whole of that second half. But yeah, I mean, defensively, that was probably our best performance, arguably the best performance of the season defensively, because every single cross that came into the box, we were there first. And I mean, it's been a very long time since we've been able to say that. Defending from crosses has been a weak point for years. And yeah, in this game, a lot of crosses came in, partially because we kept giving away stupid free kicks in wide areas. But we dealt with everything. And I mean, other than the Dan James effort that hit the bar, Leeds haven't looked like scoring. And I mean, everyone's saying, "Oh, Leeds haven't turned up again," but no. I mean, frankly, it's. I mean, we've played Leeds twice in the space of 3 weeks, and we've shut down their top players on both occasions. That's not a fluke.
Yeah.
That's not Leeds not turning up in those 2 games. We've had a defensive plan for specific players, and we've shackled them. I mean,
should say, Steve, though, I mean, Somerville, by every metric, is the Championship's most creative player by a long way. And, like you said, he's done nothing against Cour Peters twice.
Yeah,
3 times.
I mean, I find it. I mean, even though we obviously had the plan and we shackled those individual players, I still found it extraordinary that Farke took Nonto and Somerville off, because you think, well, okay, yeah, they're being shackled now, but it only takes a moment of lapse. And I mean, let's be honest, we've seen. I mean, this is a defence that's conceded more than 60 goals this season. There's a lapse in this team, so you'd have thought keeping those better players on would have been the option, but.
Leaving Perot on as well. He was dreadful.
He had a bad game. But I mean, it just didn't get in the ball really for the most part. So he had to come looking for it. But I mean, we had an issue second half in that there wasn't really an outlet. Adams came on and unfortunately showed why he wasn't in the team in the semi-final. Because he just wasn't sharp at all. So yeah, that was frustrating, and it meant that kind of pushed us back probably another 5 yards or so. But ultimately, we rode it out, and in relative comfort, I suppose, given the 12 minutes of injury time added, which in fairness was reasonable. A couple of injuries. I mean, the Walker Peters and Dan James thing. I mean, football still. I mean, I say this every time there's a big head injury. Football still has a terrible problem with concussion. I mean, there's surely absolutely no way that those 2 players didn't have some sort of concussion. I mean, you saw Walker Peters' positional sense in injury time was all over the place. Like he was constantly like about 20 yards further forward than he needed to be, and that didn't look like it was by design. So yeah, something for the authorities to think about. Obviously they won't, but yeah, all in all, amazing day. And I mean, when that final whistle finally went, I mean, one other thing on the final whistle moment, I can't believe that the keeper has put a free kick into the mixer, if you like, from their half, and Harwood-Bellis has got a free header with nobody within 5 yards of him to head it away. It's like, how does that happen? I mean, you wouldn't have that against a non-league side if you were playing them. It was absolutely extraordinary.
It was the longest 11 minutes of our lives, though.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I was gripping the safe standing rail in front of me ever tighter as those 11 minutes were going on.
It was a great afternoon for the wing backs, though, Glen, wasn't it? Carl Walker-Peters, Ryan Fraser, absolutely doing their job. and just doing exactly what they were set out to do. They both had a really great game.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, usually dismissed by the national media, as Steve was saying earlier, about us winning the two league games, and everyone was going, "No, it's not relevant. It's not relevant." It entirely was, because I reckon Somerville went out there knowing he wasn't going to get anything out of Walker Peters. He tried a couple of showboaty things in the first half, didn't really come off, and that was the end of him. So I think Walker Peters had a brilliant game against him. Didn't get forward as much as I would have liked him to against the clown they've got a left back, Firpo. So we didn't put him under as much pressure as I would have liked. But defensively, Walker Peters was outstanding. And I'm glad you mentioned Ryan Fraser, because he was brilliant. I just thought he was absolutely outstanding. You know, he's obviously been told, "Look, mate, you're not going forward. You're playing as a left back. Make sure you stay there." And whenever I've mentioned about the possibility that Ryan Fraser might be playing basically a left back, people were sort of writing it down and going, that could be a little bit dodgy. But he was excellent. And, I just, the amount of effort he put in what is basically not a natural position for him. But maybe that's his role going forward. Maybe he will be put in as a wing back more often, because I would think going forward, there's a lot of ifs here. If we sign him, and with the, we'll probably keep that formation next year, or it'll certainly be one we'll play a lot more than we have this year. So I love the performance of the wing backs, and everybody sort of like dovetailed, really, that it's not just Walker Peters, it's Harwood-Bellis as well on that side, sort of like stopping Somerville cutting inside, which is all he wants to do. And the same, and we handled Nonto out on the other side a lot better than we did in the league game up there, because that was the one area where they that we were a little bit dodgy in that game. Ryan Manning had a tough time against Nonto, but I thought both Stevens had a dodgy first sort of 5 minutes with a couple of stray passes, but after that he settled into the game and was excellent. And Fraser kept Nonto quiet, and he just resorted to throwing himself about, really, and hoping to get free kicks. And he had a couple of embarrassing ones where he threw himself on the ground, and the referee didn't give a free kick, and then he had to kind of sheepishly try and get to his feet when no one was looking. He did that a couple of times. It's just like, get on with the game, mate. Tactically, I think a lot of people's eyebrows would have been raised when they saw Ryan Fraser picked, but I thought the wee man did a brilliant job out there.
Yeah, we knew.
On Ryan Fraser, I've had a lot of Bournemouth fans in my mentions today, because I said that he's a great character, and obviously I know they had their disagreements with him. We've been through this a million times.
We did as well, didn't we? We weren't sure.
Yeah, but look, you can only go off of what's in front of you, I think, in my opinion. And this season, as Glen has just said, Ryan Fraser has put in as much as anybody. He's one of the fittest players in the squad. He looks like he's up for every single time, and you have to remember that he's playing for somebody who really respects and likes him, Russell Martin. He's done so many different roles, and I, for one, will be very pleased if they can get it over the line when they go for him, because I don't think he's necessarily a starting Premier League player at this point, but he's certainly an option in multiple different positions, and he will be useful in this squad. And I've got no evidence to suggest that he's got a bad attitude anyway. I think every time we've spoke to him, every time you see him on the pitch, I think he's given everything. A lot of credit for Ryan Fraser.
I don't know if you saw the interview with Neil Warnock. Gave an interview afterwards where he talked about the things he'd been chatting about to Russell Martin, and one of them was, how did you get Ryan Fraser to tackle like that? So he was really impressed with him. And let's face it, Neil Warnock's been around, even if he's not everyone's cup of tea. So
he knows how to get promoted out of the Championship, if nothing else.
Well, actually, Neil Warnock,
you had a word with him, didn't you?
It's the best moment of my life. This is why it's the best day of my life. I love Neil Warnock. I've got a lot of respect for him as a manager. Obviously, I think he's just a funny character, and football needs those people. And he was just walking across the mix zone at the end of the game, and I just shouted, Mr. Warnock twice. He ignored me. It's like, Neil. And he came over, thankfully, very kind.
Could have called him Colin. He responds better.
Yeah, true. And I just said to him that I think you've seen my article about obviously the Russell Martin Chinese thing, and Russell Martin talking to me about it, and he then gave him the menu and stuff. So I gave him thanks for that, and he'd obviously had a bit of a chat about it. But yeah, it was just amazing to talk to him. To be fair, like a rare fan moment, I suppose. He's obviously a lot of respect for him, but yeah, he's been funny, and he's spoken well about Saints this season, so he's been a good pundit.
There was a lot made, Steve, obviously in the run up to the game about the relationships between the two managers, and yesterday Russell Martin's tactics I just felt were a bit too much for Daniel Farke. He got it absolutely spot on, and he would have been more pleased with that than anybody.
Well, he's nailed it 3 times, hasn't he? And frankly, it's not even been a contest from a tactical perspective. Ultimately, Leeds, realistically, in all 3 games they just didn't get near us in the first game, did they, at St Mary's? But the 2 recent ones were obviously much tighter affairs, but ultimately Leeds' system relies so heavily on a moment of magic from any of the 4 front guys. But if you shackle them and cut off the supply line to them, then tactically we had it nailed, and ultimately we took the one real big chance that came in the whole game, really. I think if it was somebody other than a Dozy on the end of the second half chance that he had, then maybe that's a similarly big chance. But I think Armstrong in that situation, more or less 1-on-1 with the keeper, you would back him 9 times out of 10 in that position at Championship level. It's weird that you put the same player in the same position at Premier League and you're not quite as convinced. It's a real strange scenario, isn't it? But I mean that's a next season problem, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, there's a few of those, isn't there? Alfie, Taylor Harwood-Bellis is looking like a bit of a bargain as well for 20 million quid. I assume that's all gone through now, is it? That's kind of done.
Yeah, can I interrupt one thing? So Daniel Farke, obviously Russell Martin insisted there's nothing personal there. Well, I'll show you an image from full time. That looks personal. So, yeah, I don't know if he's had us on there. Taylor Harwood-Bellis. Yeah, I spoke to Taylor after the game as well. Yeah,
he was loving it more than anybody.
Yeah, that's officially done now. So he's Southampton's player for the good fee of £20 million. I think that's the sort of money that you can't afford to spend on a centre back if you're a Championship team. But as a Premier League team, I think that's bordering on a bargain. Russell Martin said that he thinks he'll go on to play for England. Taylor Harwood-Bellis said that he's just so delighted that he knows where he is now, because he wanted a Premier League move last season. Let's be completely honest. Southampton wouldn't have been his first choice, but he never got that move. Burnley obviously didn't go for him for whatever reason. And he's got it now. He had this contract lined up. It's already signed. He will become a Southampton player on July the 1st, and he's delighted about it. And he's so delighted that he didn't make it to the promotion party today for personal reasons. And if anyone follows him on Instagram, you know why there's personal reasons.
Driving the porcelain bus, I think.
So him and Ryan Manning, they're both mad as boxer frogs, I think. Ryan Manning made it to the party, to be fair.
It's just nice to see someone enjoying themselves as well. Glen, we're kind of running out of players to talk about, but I guess we ought to talk about the midfield as well, like Flynn Downs and Will Smallbone, Joe Aribo, because they all put a shift in too.
They did massively, and whilst, as Steve said earlier, they probably didn't have their best game sort of with the ball. There was a definite discipline there to make sure they didn't get strung out, they didn't get caught in front of the ball, and made sure that the defence has some protection. And this goes all the way back to the Daniel Farke, Russell Martin thing, because Leeds, in my opinion, we beat them twice earlier on because we dominated the midfield. They only had 2 players in there, we had 3, and the goal comes directly from that midfield, because Smallbone gets himself free. It should be a midfielder marking him. Obviously, there isn't one. So Ampadu comes out of the defence like he's playing bloody whack-a-mole or something. It's like, and he's right out on his own. Ball goes through his legs. He appeals for offside, and the rest of the defence is 15 yards behind him. And that was a tactical win, and that was another one for our midfield to chalk up, because it was Downs playing the ball to Smallbone, and then Smallbone finding the pass. So yeah, I thought that, and then you can't always play every game free flowing football, and we were calling on earlier on in the season for us to be a little bit more pragmatic at times, and that comes from the midfield. If the midfield's all bombing forward and we're losing the ball with 5 players ahead of the ball, then there's a problem. But we seem to have learned on the job and certainly demonstrated it since that Leeds away game in the league, that we can win another way. And the midfield is a massive part of that. I think the whole way Russell Martin plays depends on the midfield. If we've seen what happened when Flynn Downs isn't there. and we've seen what happens when we don't get the situation right with covering the defence. But I thought everyone in there, did a job, and everyone had the heart to do it. It was a real. I mean, a lot of the media has been, very Leeds centric, as you say. But I read a bit written by a guy called John Newsom, who people might not remember, but he used to play for Leeds in sort of like the 90s. And he came out with a very good point. He said, regardless of the ability of the players, every Southampton player would have done anything to win that game.
Mm.
And he said there were 4 or 5 on the Leeds side that just didn't have the heart for it. And, I mean, he's probably speaking from a position of extreme disappointment, but I thought that was a really interesting comment on the mentality of our players. And, you're talking about the midfield, Smallbone and Aribo, they probably see themselves basically as attack-minded players, but they were prepared to do the hard work to make sure that we held on to that 1-0. And at the end of the day, yesterday's game was all about winning. That's it. We won. End of. And the performance of those midfield players and the discipline that they showed was a major part of that.
All the rumours, of course, will start now about who might be staying, who might be going. This is, in a way, Alfie, your season gets even busier now, doesn't it, with all the rumours that are going around. One that I probably wasn't quite expecting to wake up to today is a 36-year-old player that left the club 10 years ago and
Under a
essentially
cloud.
released by Brighton, Adam Lallana, in talks with the club over a possible return. And I thought that's got to be nonsense. But then you tweeted to say there might actually be something in it. So what's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, I think having now been to the club today as well, and spoken to a few people, it sounds like it's pretty likely. So I don't know, what terms it will be. I don't know if he's going to be coming in to play and coach, whatever it is. But I imagine he'll be doing a bit of both because he's obviously been coaching with England under-21s in the last year. I think he sort of did a bit with Brighton as well, didn't he? But yeah, the Telegraph reported that they're in talks to re-sign Adam Lallana, and I'm told that could happen. I think there's a belief that he adds value to the squad, and that's not just on the pitch, is it? Yeah, he left under a bit of a cloud 10 years ago. I mean, I obviously wasn't here then, so I don't know too much about it. But what I do know from a relationship with Adam Lallana through my former colleague Benji Nurek is that Adam was, is disappointed about the fact that he's not liked or respected by Saints fans, genuinely, because I think he probably feels that he just did what everybody else did, in that they all left for a big move, and Liverpool obviously is a good move. So he wants to be liked by the fans, and he wants to be respected. So I'm sure that if he comes back and if that gets done, he'll put an absolute shift in to try and sort of change that opinion of him. And I think it's a decent idea. Obviously, we had the Theo Walcott scenario in mind, in that he came in on a big contract and didn't really deliver until the last sort of 2 months of his contract, and even then that wasn't enough to keep Saints up. But I don't imagine that it'll be. A huge contract like that again. And it's a slightly different position. I think that it's a midfield area where they haven't got loads of options. Assuming that Stuart Armstrong doesn't stay, Joe Rothwell probably won't come back. We don't know what will happen with Charlie Alcaraz. So it's just bodies in that midfield, and I see him slotting into a Russell Martin style of play. I imagine they probably get on well enough. They're similar in age, so maybe there's a connection there as well with Brighton. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
I was hoping maybe it was just because he was at the game yesterday and he appeared on the telly, so people putting 2 and 2 together. Can you see a scenario where it works out well for us, Glenn? Because obviously the comparisons to the Theo Walcott thing don't fill me with huge amounts of confidence, but there might be more layers to this one. Yeah,
I mean, on the face of it, it's pretty underwhelming. But remember, last time we were in the Premier League, we went with kids, didn't we? Basically, when you think about it, we signed, for example, Gavin Bazunu and Romeo Lavia, and we got rid of Ori Romeo and Fraser Forster, and that ultimately killed us. So maybe it's an indication that we're not going to go down the signing a load of promising 18-year-olds and hoping that works, because it didn't last time. So yeah, for me, bearing in mind, we're led to believe that the money situation, we're not going to be being extravagant. So, as Alfie kind of hinted at, you would hope. Oh, you would hope it's only 1 year for starters, and you would also hope that the money reflects what he is as a player now and what he can add now, not what he was 10 years ago, sort of thing. Which is kind of what we almost did with Theo Walcott. And what are the expectations? You know, what were the expectations be of the fans? I mean, he was never a 90-minute player when he was 23. So he's Alfie was saying, he's certainly not going to be a 90-minute player now. Can he still play wide like where David Brooks does, or does he just slot in where Stuart Armstrong is now? So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, we saw him play. I think he played for Brighton against us a couple of years ago, and he was still very good. I mean, we were terrible, but he was still very good, and he still looked like a decent player. But there's a big difference between 34 and 36. So yeah, I mean, yeah, on the face of it, I mean, with regards to the way he left, yeah, it wasn't great, and he made a bit of a prat of himself. But then people make a prat of themselves when they're 23, 24, don't they? And you grow up a little bit, one hopes. So it didn't really bother me. It doesn't really bother me from that point of view anymore. When I saw him on the screen at Wembley, he was sat there with Matt Letizia, and I went, "Oh, fair enough. He's come to support the boys." I didn't realise he was looking for a contract, but
it looked like he had the club tie on, though. I thought,
you know, but fair play. I mean, it's certainly not going to be the only player we sign, is it? So let's.
Well, Aaron Ramsdale was there, wasn't he? So that could be one.
Get him in.
Steve, can you remember like when he left, just on the Adam Lallana stuff? I remember like him having to take out a full page advert in the Echo to say goodbye because the club kind of just did one of those statements that said he's left.
2 lines.
It was literally a one-liner, wasn't it, on the club website? The club made it very, very clear by the lack of words what they thought of the way the deal had been conducted from Lallana's side. Let's put it that way. He took out a one-page advert in the Echo, which was basically all about him. So if anything, that advert probably actually made it worse. Yeah. I mean, there's a very easy PR win for him if this deal does get done. In that you do an interview with the club media, and you basically
or with the Echo.
And the Echo, why not both? And yeah, you basically just say, look, I was young, I was a little bit naive, didn't really think about what the reaction might be in terms of the way the deal went down. Because I mean, I don't know if you remember, there were videos of him before he left us, where he was asked by fans in Brazil, I think it was, ahead of the World Cup. Where he was asked by fans to sign a Liverpool shirt, and he was asked by those fans, "I really hope you sign for him." And he said, "Yeah, I hope so too." It's like, yeah, that's a pretty dumb thing to do, and especially given that barely 6 months previous he'd signed a new contract with specific quotes saying, "I want to be here for the rest of my career."
Was he captain at the time?
Yeah, he was captain as well. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, there's an easy win that he does an interview and lays it all out, and bit of a sort of hands up. Yeah, sorry, I was a bit of a dick when I was younger. It happens. We move on, and everyone's happy again.
Yeah. Well, you need only look in the direction of Ryan Fraser, for example, to say that whatever happens, people can absolutely give everything, whatever the past was. So, yeah, I wouldn't be too bothered, but I appreciate that I'm not a Saints fan, so I don't really have much to say.
I think Bednarek as well.
Oh, yeah, Bednarek, the redemption arc. Yeah. There is a way back. Right, who else, Alfie? What other names? I think Russell Martin saying yesterday, obviously, Che Adams, Stuart Armstrong, Alex McCarthy could have played their last games.
So let's summarise off the top of my head. So we've obviously got the loan players who've going to leave this season. So obviously we've got Flynn Downs and Ryan Fraser, the two that some of them will try and sign permanently. They will make an offer. I think there's been some pretty advanced work done on the Ryan Fraser one, certainly from.
Well, Newcastle got no interest in keeping him.
That's the easier one to do, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, they may well want a bit of cash now. They know the Saints have got some. He's still got a year left on his deal, so they'd have to agree something with them to release him, whether that's a free deal or not. And obviously, personal terms are not going to be a problem with Ryan Fraser. There's no doubt about that. And Saints will go in for Flynn Downs, and obviously Jack Stevens and Russell Martin both started chants at the promotion party today, saying, sign him up, that sort of thing. So there's no doubt they'll go for it. But I suppose it will come down, in my opinion, to whether the new West Ham boss wants to have a look at him. Because if the West Ham boss does want to have a look at him, he's a boyhood West Ham fan. I imagine that he'll take that chance to maybe play for them. And if not, then he's got a brilliant second option for him him here, which obviously he'll be one of the most important players in the team and well loved. So on the guys who are out of contract, that's Che Adams, Stuart Armstrong, and Alex McCarthy. I asked Russell Martin; he wants to keep all three of them, but Russell Martin says stuff like that all the time. I don't know if that's going to be possible or feasible. He said that other clubs will probably come in for them that can offer them a better wage than Saints would or could. We spoke to Alex McCarthy and asked him about his contract. He insisted he's not thought about it. Obviously, he has. The bloke's going to be unemployed.
Absolute lies.
He's unemployed in 4 weeks' time. He's got a young son. He's thought about where he's going to be living in 4 weeks' time, without a doubt. But we'll have to see where that is. And Che Adams and Stuart Armstrong, I guess we just have to see, don't we? See what offers they get, see what it comes down to. But I know there's been a lot of talk about, particularly Che Adams and offers from Wolves and things like that. So no definitive answer on them. But I guess we'll have to see.
Who would be on your list to sign up first? But obviously, Flynn Downs. I think West Ham get a £1 million extra, don't they? Because we went up. So, would you be trying to keep hold of Stu Armstrong, maybe even Alex McCarthy for another year?
Alex McCarthy is funny. He's done this a couple of times. He's got to the end of his contract, and I thought, well, he's going. And we've ended up offering him a new deal. He's performed exceptionally well since he's got back into the team, and I think it's been an upgrade. To be honest, I'm not just being harsh with Gavin Bazunu. We all know the none too favourable stats about the expected goals and whatever. But I think McCarthy has been excellent, and it has reminded me of when he came back into the team at the when the Gabbiadini at Swansea season, that one when we stayed up, where he came in and just added a complete sort of layer of calmness to the whole proceedings. My question mark was obviously whether he could wind the clock back to that and be the goalkeeper he was then, and he's been excellent. I don't feel, he's had a couple of little wrinkles with his passing that we've got away with so far. Whether he could do it at Premier League level, or where obviously everything is quicker, whether they think he's capable of doing that. But I certainly wouldn't be against him having another year at this stage. If you sign him up, then it takes a bit of pressure off trying to find a number one goalkeeper. But obviously, we're going to sign the guy with the big beard who's in the crowd.
Agreed.
So who knows? But it wouldn't surprise me if they offered him a deal for a year. It's just a case of whether that's enough. I mean, goalkeepers when they're McCarthy's age, they'll be looking for a 2 or 3 year deal.
Yeah,
probably. So, McCarthy's pretty much always been based in the south, hasn't he? So, off the top of my head,
Reading Palace,
Crystal Palace, Reading, and us. So, so you would imagine he'd want to stay around.
Did you see the report saying that Liverpool might want him as a backup goalkeeper? I don't know where it was, but I saw it in some national newspaper about a couple of weeks ago. That's not a bad gig if you can get it, is it? Really?
We never thought that Fraser Forster would go to Tottenham, did we? That was, and he's obviously someone that's happy to sit on the bench. So
he's always, I've always sort of like, that's always been a question mark against him for me, that he was more than happy to sit on the bench. So maybe that sort of thing would appeal to him. But I guess it's, we're going to have to prioritise positions that we're looking for players. We're not going to be able to sign the players we want in every position. There's just not going to be the money for that. So, if they sign him, do they then need to go and find another first choice goalkeeper, or are they going to make do with McCarthy and Lumley for the first, until Bazunu gets fit and you've got 3 goalkeepers again? I don't know. So it's a difficult one, but all I can say is that I've been really impressed with him since he's come back into the team. And I wouldn't be against him staying, but obviously the finances have got to be right for both parties.
Yeah,
this is I don't think you can have a situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can have a situation where Alex McCarthy is your second highest paid player. That is not sustainable, and that's obviously that has been the situation this season. So
there is echoes of the Fraser Forster thing, though, isn't there? Because
very
he
much
was
so.
on such a huge wage, and there was a real argument at the time for just keeping him on because he would be good to have around. He was a decent keeper, but it was the wages, I think.
Yeah, and also I think I'm sure there was a story that did the rounds that Forster would have been happy to be back up to Gavin Bazunu, but not back up to McCarthy. because obviously he trained with McCarthy for years, so basically in his mind he knew, right, I'm better than McCarthy. This is just not a negotiation point for me. So yeah, that all got a little bit messy, and we ended up giving both of them massive wages.
Yeah.
Which obviously hamstrung us a little bit in for a while. But yeah, I think, as Glenn says, we've got to prioritise positions. I personally would still prioritise a goalkeeper as a very high priority. Bazunu isn't going to be able to play until at least March, we think.
No.
So you're effectively ruling him out for the season, because no goalkeeper is coming back from injury and playing the last month or two of the season, especially in a likely relegation battle. So yeah, you're looking for a keeper for at least next season. I mean, Aaron Ramsdale was obviously good mates with David Brooks. I don't know what his relationship is with anybody else in our squad. And if we assume that we're probably not going to try and get David Brooks on a permanent deal, so I think that would probably be more expensive than the output that we've had from him.
Yeah,
I think that's probably not completely unreasonable to say. So yeah, I think if you're looking at a goalkeeper and at the end of the day, if you've got an England goalkeeper who's available and you can get him, I mean, if Arsenal are willing to loan him, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you would imagine Arsenal are probably wanting to offload him completely.
I'm happy to be proven wrong here, but I cannot imagine any scenario in which Aaron Ramsdale joins Southampton.
I'd be mad. I mean,
he'd
he'd basically done two consecutive relegation battles with Bournemouth and Sheffield United, and then got a big move. He's not then going to take a step back to basically go back to what he was doing before.
And also, this is all on the basis that he turned up to Wembley in a hag.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a low bar at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Dawson was in the Saints end as well, the former Spurs and Nottingham Forest defender. So yeah, I'm not going to suggest that we're going
to Roger Black, the runner, we could sign him up.
Sign a 40-year-old retired centre back as well.
I think you're absolutely bang on those, Steve, because you mentioned about prioritising positions, and like I've said on the pod last week and in the live one as well. I do think that even if they keep the good part of the squad, they're going to have to make at least sort of 6 or 7 additions. And if you've got people who are already in the building and you know a bit about them and you can rely on them, I think it's probably quite wise to keep hold of them for the bodies. And they've got the funds to do so at the moment. So you're going to be going out and buying 6 or 7 players. Do you need to add another one? But goalkeeper is so important. So I do agree.
I think looking back at you look at the players that are coming back from loans out. Who of those are we likely to kind of want to stick around? Are we going to want to look at Bella-Kotchap? Is that
I'm on the Glen side of the camp there, but
is Bella-Kotchap a player that you look at and say, well, you've got the technical attributes. Now, can we get into your head and get you to kind of switch on fully and buy into this? I mean, he's now had the operation on his shoulder, so that now shouldn't be a problem for him. I've no idea how much or how well he's played for PSV while he's been on loan, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Alcaraz coming back from Juventus, is that going to be a situation now where he's had a taste of playing meaningful football at a big club and doesn't fancy the scrap with us anymore? These are all conversations that Russell Martin is going to have to have with these players. I mean, there's a few there that clearly won't be coming back to play for us. Some of them are obviously going to report for pre-season, but that's just going to be a fitness exercise, go through the motions until a deal's done to send them on their way. But there's 2 or 3 maybe that we'll want to have a proper look at and see if they're game for the fight, really.
Who's been the most impressive of our out on loan players? It's Tall Paul, isn't it?
Tall Paul, yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, that would be some redemption, wouldn't it? If you are watching live, by the way, I just things that you won't miss about the Championship in the comments tonight. If you're watching live, things you won't miss. So it could be like Tuesday night games. It could be the second tier podcast, whatever it is. Just put
hearing about Leeds,
things that you won't miss. Maybe David Prutton on Sky. I don't know. Alfie, you had a big interview this week as well with Henrik Kraft, was that right? Outlining some of the plans, and that all seemed really positive. And that was before the result at Wembley.
Yeah, that was obviously before the result. And the main thing was just him sort of taking the opportunity to reassure us all that whatever happened, the plan was to keep Russell Martin as the manager. The only reason Russell Martin will leave, even if they'd lost, would be because he'd been plucked by a bigger job. And to be fair, with the managerial merry-go-round that's going on, and apparently Kieran McKenna, signing a new deal at Ipswich, unbelievably.
He's used that situation very well, hasn't he? Or rather, his agent has.
I've got a 1% fear that a bigger club comes in for Russell Martin after doing such a good job, but I hope so. I hope that doesn't happen, obviously, and I've got no reason to think it will. But yeah, Henry Kraft was very positive about all of the things. It was mainly just a quick whistle stop interview to sort of reaffirm Sport Republic's investment and reaffirm their sort of commitment to the club. They think everyone's doing a good job. And I asked him about the Jason Wilcox situation. I got the same answer that I told all of you on the live pod a couple of weeks ago, really, that they're still just looking at it. They've got people in the building. They've got Mowbray. They've got Mark Bitcon, who I explained, former director. They've got the academy director, all this sort of thing. So, I don't think they think there's a desperate need to get somebody in there. But now the budget comes in. Does that change in the next few weeks? But it's always good to meet with those guys and just chat with them and show my face. And they're always good talkers. They talk a good game, don't they? Otherwise, they wouldn't be where they are. So I've got a lot of credit for what they've done this season, I suppose, in terms of recognizing that last year was an absolute disaster on many accounts, and handing reins over and getting a good job done by a lot of people.
It is mad, Glenn, when you think about that first full year of Sport Republic. It couldn't have got any worse with all the money they wasted in January, the sacked managers, the relegation. And I can't help but think that now is their chance to kind of start all over again and go, right, we've learned from that. And now this is where we really come into our own.
Well, the key thing is that I hope they remember to stay in the background, because they've been kind of model owners this year in that they've kept out of it. They've not really had any sort of headline involvement whatsoever. So the hope or the fear, I guess, is that they think, it's the Premier League, we must get involved again. So it's all bright and shiny and very high profile, therefore we must take a more active role. No, please don't. Stay where you are and let the people who understand football properly, let them do their job.
Rasmus is chairman of Göztepe, so he's basically based out in Izmir now. So that should kind of ensure that. Probably. He was at
the game yesterday, wasn't he? I think I'm sure.
I would expect so. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though. I mean, on that side, I was pleased for Dragan Solak, really, because
it's a lot of his money has gone into this.
That image of him as well, just like pulling his fingers in his face. That was all of us.
It's his money, and you got to remember this is a businessman whose investment went down the toilet last year. So to suddenly have this sort of like, from a financial point of view for him, as Henrik Kraft, I think, pointed out, or was it Parsons pointed out, he's put a lot of money in, a hell of a lot of money. So we have a lot to be grateful for. So I was really pleased to see him at the end. Just he probably aged about 20 years in that last.
We all
even more than me, yeah. So it was a perfect day for him, and I'm pleased for him, and it's hopefully the season as a whole has shown Sport Republic the value of let's leave it to the experts and let's just do what we're good at.
And just finally, Steve, what would you like to see in the next few weeks? Bit of business done early, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think every club would always like to get their business done early, because you would want to know what you're working with at the start of pre-season. I mean, I think realistically we have to sort of accept our position in the food chain. But I do think they've got to be quite strong in key positions. So the Flynn Downs situation, we can't let that drag on until the end of August.
Yeah.
He's got to be either in the building in July or we move on. We find someone else to do that role, because that role is so important, as we saw from the results from the games where he didn't play in the Championship, obviously against Championship opposition. If we don't have a player suitable to play that role in the Premier League, we are going to get torn to pieces every week. So that position needs to be nailed down. I mean, ideally, you'd want it done before the players come back to pre-season, but certainly certainly probably 2 or 3 weeks before the start of the season, we need to know who is playing that role this season. That's key. I think beyond that, you can kind of plug gaps in and sort of make allowances at certain times. But that position, as I say, we've seen all season how vitally important it's been to the system. And the system falls apart without it. So get that position nailed. Whether it's Downs, great. If it is, if it isn't, then sort out who it is and get that deal done quickly as well.
Somebody else in, yeah. A couple of bits to wrap up before we finish. Obviously, we've been running the fantasy FPL. Congratulations to Stephen Morrow, who took the FPL trophy this year. There's a T-shirt coming your way in the next few weeks. Have you got any ideas how you did, guys? Glenn and Alfie, actually, you both did quite well this season.
Yeah, Glenn knows exactly how well he's done. He's been checking it every single week.
Alfie was ahead of me by about 3 points going into the last week. And are you still ahead of me, Alfie?
No, not anymore, unfortunately.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
I had a good end to the
10th,
season.
I think. Steve was 21st. Alfie was 10th, 2,412 points. Glenn 8th, 2,423 points. So there wasn't a lot in it. The predictions league as well. This is a laugh. Final points as follows. Everybody except Steve got a point from Leeds, meaning that Steve lost his 1 week lead on Glenn and ended up finishing
last.
Equal last, mate. Come on.
Producer Alex took the crown, and usually we give the winner,
which is a damning indictment on the rest of us.
The guy who knows nothing about football.
We are going to give away a TSP T-shirt as well, I think, or certainly so much. So head over to the socials at Total Saints Pods. You'll find a post on there with all the details, and we'll get that sorted out soon. Don't forget, you can follow Total Saints Podcast. You'll find us on all the social media platforms. It's at Total Saints Pod there. We've rushed out a new playoff winners T-shirt as well. I'm sure the club will be doing the same next week, but if you want to check out the new merch store, I can vouch for how decent some of the stuff is. shop.totalsaints.co.uk if you want to get your hands on the new playoff winners T-shirt. You'll also find us on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. And when you get on there, you'll see we've got 4 tiers, and they range from £5 to £20 per month. Each of the tiers comes with different perks, including some shout outs for the patrons in our France finale and our Mick Shannon tier. So a final thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe, and Mike E, who are all in our Francis Benali tier. And also a big thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, and Mark Littlewood, who are all in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you to Alfie as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the break, and do keep an eye on our socials for some special episodes that we're planning over the summer. Bring on the Premier League.